Surf's up, guys, it's Mauisnake here, and today I'm going to touch on smooya being benched, regali replacing him, and Brollan being targeted by NIP, and maybe his eventual departure from Fnatic, and what that means. So the first thing I want to start with is smooya, and I want to talk about some of the good stuff with smooya. He's obviously more skilled than a lot of tier 2.5 sort of players. The fact that he farmed so hard on Movistar riders is pretty telling. The fact that he can kind of join a lot of games, and if the team is not really touching the top 30, I'd say, you're probably going to dominate them if you have smooya on your team. He's just very flashy, skillful, not willing. I mean, he's very willing to just call his own number, go for little plays, peaks, etc., that are going to net him a lot of output in terms of stats, frags, etc. I also think that smooya might be a little bit underrated right now as sort of a guy that's going to help the team morally speaking, especially when they're doing pretty well. Because we got this little shot of Fnatic, a little piece that ESL put together at Katowice, and we watched the whole thing, and smooya was pretty good at actually being a moral leader in some of the moments in the way that he hyped the team up. And I think that's probably something that people undervalue him for right now, and I think it's probably kind of this part of the greater path that he's on that's going to be reforming his sort of the way what he brings to a team in terms of things outside the server. The intangibles is how they're usually referred to as. But I want to go into the negatives too, and probably why he was benched. The first thing I want to show you guys is the stats. So flat out, these are the stats for what I would kind of call the relevant events that Fnatic has been playing lately. You have the Katowice, you have the play-in. I don't really care about the Pinnacle thing, but the Fun Spark event and some other events, they actually won that DreamHack Open November, but the competition little iffy, and it was an online event. Not that I think that it being online means that it's worth nothing, but because Fun Spark was online, but it was against what I would say was stronger competition than that DreamHack. So if we kind of take our eyes off the stats for a second here, I want to talk about kind of the way that smooya played, things I noticed, because I watched all the games he played at FunSpark because I was working that event, and I watched almost all the games he played at Katowice because I was either covering Fnatic or I was watching Fnatic games to prep for my games where I was covering Fnatic. And these are kind of my rough findings. They're not even rough. These are the findings I had because I watched pretty much everything. smooya has a very poor problem with repeaking. It happened a lot where he would basically be taking up an angle behind a single piece of cover, and there is a way to fall back. There is a way to play a late round situation, and instead of trying to use foresight to see how and envision how he's going to play the rest of the round out with a new route, he just wants to stand his ground and fight to the death, and that doesn't usually end well for oppers. That's why when you see people like Zywoo, even Simple, Device, Shiro, for example, all of the best oppers in the world will take that first shot, and then they'll leave that spot, find a new angle, find a new way that they want to get into the round. And sometimes it leads to saving. Sometimes it's okay to save. But smooya, if you couldn't find that new angle into a round, that new avenue, then yeah, you just sometimes lose, and sometimes you just have to save. But dying is such a catastrophe for the philosophy of tier 1 teams right now. Dying for an opper is so bad because that op should give you a chance in the next round to have a win condition. And so smooya's biggest flaw is to not play what I would call kind of modern opping CS, where you look at the top oppers, they all will reposition themselves to try to win later in the round, but if they can't win at that point, they give it up. They'll give up the round. And smooya definitely was not a guy that was saving too much. He was definitely here. I'll show you guys these numbers one more time. Kind of look at the deaths per round there. It's not terrible by any means, but look at what happened at DreamHack Open November. 0.52 deaths per round, and then it starts going up to 0.65 at some of the recent stuff that I care about. Fun Spark, IM Katowice. That's a lot of deaths for an opper, frankly speaking. If you look at Shiro, you look at Simple Zywoo, their numbers are lower, flat out. And you just kind of think about the way that they play. It's a lot more defensive. It's more about self-preservation sometimes. And it's just, you can't really, you want to give yourself the most chances to win, and smooya didn't do that for his team. He thought he had to win rounds, lose rounds in the span of a moment. And that's just not how people play anymore. So that was a huge flaw of his. I actually think his mechanics are fine. He definitely gave himself enough opportunities, but it's not good enough that you should just repeak into angles because people were holding him oftentimes when he repeaked and then he would just die. So the one thing I will say is that I do think that smooya has a place in kind of tier 1.5 CS right now. I'm not trying to be mean about like the tiers or anything like that, but I think that he probably just has to almost get someone to work with him on some of these sort of concepts and just evolve his game a little bit. Don't even change it, just evolve it. It's not even like it's just one switch. It can get better and more refined, and it's not even too hard. He's not even too far away from it. But Fnatic decided that they want to go with Regali now, so I want to touch upon him. Regali seems like a guy that's probably a no problem player. I've talked to him a couple times at WePlay in post game interviews, even at like the after party kind of stuff, like the after party for an Academy League, which is not a normal after, whatever. You guys don't need to know, but basically it's just chill. It's just pretty chill. So there's kids running around everywhere. It's chill. It's like basically Regali is a guy that seems to have not as much of an ego. He seems to be pretty much like spurred by the fact that he's one of the first players from his region that's getting some international attention. But there is a problem with Regali. His stats have been degrading from season to season. Look at season 1, 1.25 rating, pretty darn good numbers. 0.82 kills per round. Deaths per round have been getting worse. That's not really good. And his kills per rounds has been sliding in the wrong direction. And his rating too. And the placements of Fnatic have also been falling worse and worse. And obviously I watched all of this because I've worked all of the WePlay Academy leagues. And I'll just say that I think Regali right now is in a position where he told us he's in school. And season 1, he was in summer break. He got to grind the game. He got to just play to his heart's content. And then season 2, he talked about the fact that he was now going to university or college or whatever, I don't know, the Danish equivalent. Because even though he's not from Denmark, but he basically goes to school in Denmark. And basically he has to just work more. So if he's on Fnatic, I need him to not be in school because the Regali we saw from season 1 was much better than season 2, season 3. And I think that once school started taking a hold of him, he really couldn't balance school with playing competitively at a competitive level. It was very obvious that was the case. So things about Regali as a player is that he's more passive than smooya. He's probably got like a more modern style, I would say. He still was able to open up a lot of rounds in season 1, but the most striking thing about Regali is that pretty much not season 2 as much, but basically season 1 and 3, he was a pretty darn good clutcher, and that's something that I've begun to value a lot higher when people can pull off 1v3s, 1v2s, even just putting together 2v3s, 2v4s, like man deficit situations. Because if Fnatic Rising would try to basically make space in a round for him, they try to get on a bomb site, and then he get to play his favorite post-plant sort of positions, whether that's Vertigo on A ramp, where they're all trying to charge at him, trying to defuse the bomb, which planted default on A, or it's planted B on Inferno, and he gets to play new box, just isolate the fights. He did a really solid job in those kinds of positions. Definitely one of the best. Like Mauisnake stole the show, but I actually thought Regali probably played those situations a little bit better. Just wasn't as mechanically flashy in those sort of moments. So I think that Regali has a long, like he can elevate his game a lot. His ceiling, which we saw in season 1, was quite high. And if he can kind of get back to that level of skill, he could play a more modern style, probably take criticism, work with the coaching staff, work with Alex, and try to become the best version of himself, which I have seen before, and it's impressive. That being said, in terms of pure statistical output, obviously smooya did better at tier 2 than Regali did, but it's just kind of the way that smooya did it proved to be unsustainable for playing at the highest level, whereas I actually think that Regali's gameplay is much easier to refine to a level that can be passable for tier 1 Counter-Strike, tier 1.5 Counter-Strike, which Fnatic is sort of at right now. And I think that right now, this move is going to set Fnatic back a little bit, and it might lower their it might actually lower their floor, because smooya was just such a noob stomper that essentially you're never really going to lose your place out of the top 20 or so, because smooya should just be able to defeat everybody almost single-handedly that's, you know, ranked 25 plus. So that's a little bit concerning for them, especially given the fact that Brollan might be leaving. So I want to touch on that just very briefly. It's a lot of speculation right now, or it's not really speculation. It's just kind of like we don't know the player that Fnatic's targeting to be the replacement, but that's obviously going to hurt Fnatic a lot. I think in terms of the way to perceive this from NIP side, Brollan right now is still so. I kind of judge Fnatic as such that for the last year or so, when they've had this lineup, I thought that Brollan was probably their strongest and most impactful player overall. But I'd say that Mezi took that spot over for me in the last couple months. I think a lot of people were very hyped on Mezi very early on in Fnatic, and even on Cloud9, because it's just like, oh, he doesn't do a lot of stuff wrong or whatever. But like, the thing is that Mezi was put into a lot of positions that were kind of favorable for him. Not on CT side, where he plays a lot of bad spots, but on T side, it felt like Brollan was always running in first, basically, for him, and then Mezi got to bait, and it's always better to be the second in guy. Just flat out is. It's hard to trade that guy. It's usually just going to be a free kill as the entry fragger dies, and yet the fact that Brollan was able to keep up in terms of statistical output with Mezi while running in before Mezi was a reason why I thought Brollan is just a more impactful player overall. But I think that now that they have Mezi, who may have taken over as the best overall player for Fnatic, and then Krim seemed to have kind of reinvigorated himself at Katowice, and Alex actually playing some pretty good T sides overall. Like I think his T sides are still pretty solid. I wouldn't say he's like gone above and beyond to be one of the best, but I actually think the way that he plays like Inferno T side, very good, like good push and pull on the map, good overall macro understanding, and like knowing where the rotations are, when the rotations of the opponents are probably going to be, and even knowing sometimes timings for when a CT probably has to make a rotation, and then it looks like like, oh, they just timing them. But it happened enough times for me where it felt like, okay, Alex is consciously doing some of the things that he's doing as a leader, and it paid off for them. So I think that right now this roster's in a weird state because we don't know who the fifth is. But I will say that this regali move, overall, just to summarize it, is probably better for the overall long-term future of Fnatic. And I actually think this could be better for the overall long-term of smooya if he gets on a decent enough team that's, you know, English-speaking. Because I really think that there's a lot more for him to give. And it's kind of like he needs to change his philosophy on defensive opping a little bit. But I also think that that's not too difficult if you just kind of begin to be cognizant of the changes you need to make in your gameplay and begin to watch demos and start to like reassess yourself, given the new kind of modern style that a lot of people are playing. But yeah, that's going to be it. I just wanted to record my brief thoughts. It's too long for a tweet, but yeah, make sure to follow me on Twitter, guys. Make sure to check me out there. And obviously, thanks for subbing. I'm new at server time episodes coming out. Be sure to sub to the Patreon on that. That goes to everybody on that. And as always, guys, being toxic is a choice.